Wasn't that delicious?
So good.
Your bill, ladies?
I got it. No,
I got it.
Seriously, I insist. I insisted first.
Oh, don't be silly.
You don't be silly.
People with the Wells Fargo Active Cash credit card prefer to pay because they earn unlimited 2% cash rewards on purchases.
Okay, rock, paper, scissors for it. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
No!
The Wells Fargo Active Cash credit card. Visit wellsfargo.com/activecash. Terms apply.
This is Peter, and welcome back to the History Shorts. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the world. Download Podcast Republic today, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Today on History Shorts. If you ask Americans today what the Founding Fathers believed about religion, you'll likely hear two very different answers. Some insist that the United States was founded as a deeply Christian nation. Others argue that the founders wanted religion kept entirely separate from politics. The truth, as is often the case in history, is much more complicated. The men who shaped the American Revolution did not share a single religious vision. Let's get that out of the way. There were Anglicans and Presbyterians, as well as some skeptics, devout believers, and cautious rationalists. But they did agree on one thing. Religion and government needed a new relationship, one unlike anything that Europe had seen before. This is the story of what the founders actually believed about faith, freedom, and the role of religion in the American experiment. Our history brief today returns to some strange history. A quick word from our sponsors.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
This day in history. On March 10th, 1876, Alexander Graham Bell made the first successful telephone call, famously saying, "Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you." On March 10th, 1945, American bombers carried out a devastating firebombing raid on Tokyo during World War II, creating one of the deadliest air attacks in history and leaving vast sections of the city in ruins. Story of the day. To understand the founders' views, you have to start with the world that they inherited. So for some context. In Europe at the time, religion and state were often inseparable. Kings ruled by divine authority. God allowed them to rule. Taxes supported official churches, and dissenters, such as Catholics, Protestants, Jews, and freethinkers, could face persecution depending on who held power. Many American colonists came to the New World seeking religious freedom, yet colonial governments themselves often enforced religious conformity. By the late 18th century, Enlightenment ideas about reason and natural rights began reshaping political thought. Leaders like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison believed that faith should be voluntary, not mandated by law. Jefferson wrote in 1786, defending Virginia's statute for religious freedom. Our civil rights have no dependence on our religious opinions. It was a radical claim, and one that would influence the First Amendment itself later on. The founders, however, were not in uniform in their personal faith. George Washington attended church regularly and often spoke about Providence, yet his writings avoided explicit doctrinal language. Jefferson admired Jesus' moral teachings but rejected many traditional Christian doctrines, editing his own version of the Gospels to remove any mention of miracles. Benjamin Franklin described himself as a believer in a creator, but then expressed skepticism about organized religion's divisions. And John Adams argued that religion could support public virtue, though he opposed government control over belief. This diversity mattered. It meant that the new nation could not rely on a single religious identity to hold it together. When the Constitution was drafted in 1787, it said remarkably very little about religion. That silence was quite intentional. But during the ratification debates, critics worried that the federal government might one day create a national church. The result, hence, was the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The wording reflects a delicate balance. The government would neither establish a religion nor interfere with personal belief. Madison argued that faith must be left to individual conscience, warning that government involvement in religion historically led to corruption of both the church and the state. Even those who favored strict separation did not necessarily oppose religion itself. Many founders believed religious belief encouraged moral behavior, something that they considered essential for a functioning republic. Washington, in his farewell address, famously wrote, "Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports." Historians debate what Washington meant by religion, but his language suggests a broad ethical framework rather than a strict adherence to any denomination. For many founders, religion was valuable, but it had to remain voluntary. Modern debates often simplify the founders' views. Some portray them as uniformly devout Christians seeking to build a religious state. Others depict them as strict secularists determined to remove religion from public life. The historical record shows neither extreme. The founders lived in a deeply religious society, that much we know, but they were also influenced by Enlightenment philosophy, a worldview that emphasized reason, tolerance, and pluralism. Their solution was not to eliminate religion from society, but to really remove it from government control. This distinction is crucial. They envisioned a nation where many faiths could coexist, and perhaps should, but without one dominating the others through law. At the time, this approach was revolutionary. Most nations still maintained official churches. America's experiment with religious liberty, thus, created a space where Baptists, Quakers, Catholics, Jews, and later countless other groups could practice freely. Over time, this freedom led not to the decline of religion, as more Europeans predicted, but to an explosion of religious diversity. The founders may not have anticipated the full outcome, but their framework made it all possible. Now, it's important to remember that the founders argued among themselves. Some states retained religious tests or church funding long after independence. Others pushed more aggressively toward separation. The First Amendment applied only to the federal government at first, leaving states to, well, navigate their own paths. The debate over religion's place in public life certainly did not end in 1789. In many ways, it had just begun. The History Brief. The following comes from Strange History by the Portable Press, published in 2016. 1961, Ivan Ivanovich became the first person to fly into space. Well, the first person-like thing to fly into space, I should say. Ivan Ivanovich, the Russian equivalent of basically John Johnson, was a life-sized test flight mannequin, and he and his companion, an actual live dog named Chernushka or Blackie, were rocketed into space weeks before Yuri Gagarin was to take his historic flight. Ivanovich's mission was to test the Vostok spacecraft and the SK-1 pressure suit. After completing a single orbit in 89 minutes, Ivanovich and the dog returned safely to Earth. He was so lifelike, with eyes, eyelashes, eyebrows, lips, and etc., but the word maquette or dummy was written on his forehead so that nobody would think that he was a dead cosmonaut. And on a side note, Ivan the Space Mannequin was sold at an auction house in 1993. He was purchased by a Texas billionaire and one time presidential candidate, H. Ross Perot, for $189,500. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and helping make this little show such a mighty success. If you are enjoying this show and would like to help with its production, you can always donate a few dollars at buymeacoffee.com or become a patron member to enjoy these episodes ad-free. Both links can be found on our website at www.historyshortspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out my new YouTube series called 25 Events That Made America. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow.